Shown are the tools that were used in the making of this video: a socket wrench, Phillips head screwdriver, needle nose pliers, and a side cutter. These are typical tools needed for the install of the TrollMaster system, but be aware that your install may use different or additional tools. Now let's join Scott, who is getting started with the install.
Alright, so today we're installing the TM214 kit on a Mercury 15 horse 4-stroke. And to start, we're going to mount the servo bracket up on this manifold bolt up here. And you notice what I did on this servo is I actually mounted it on the back side of the bracket and put the screws through that way. What that's going to do, it'll actually move the servo back just enough to help us gain clearance from the cowling once we put it on when we're done. So we just loosen this bolt up. And then we'll take that out and put the bracket underneath there. So we're literally just taking this bolt through here. You may need to adjust your cable clamp a little bit, as we need to do here. And then we'll just set this right back in there. And tighten her up. Oop. You don't want to make sure you get that back tight again so it doesn't come loose. So just give her a bit of a turn. Alright, then we can return our cable back here and put the clamp back down. And that's it for mounting the servo. Alright, so now that we got our servo bracket and servo installed, we'll go ahead and set our arm to the right adjustment. The reason we need to do this is they are not factory preset. They're all going to be a little bit different. So for this one, we're just going to move this one Phillips head screw out and then pull the servo off the body, the servo arm right off the body, and then turn it and then push it back on the stud. So that looks like this. These screws are usually not magnetic, so you want to be careful to not drop them because they're little and they can hide very easily. So for this, what I actually like to use, just a little side cutters to get up underneath it, and you just press up a little bit and it comes right off. You'll see this, that's a spline stud on here, and we'll go ahead and hold that to about our 4 o'clock position when you think about it looking at a clock. So that way when we go to move it, it'll always come back to this position, and that'll be perfect to get the full throw of the motor. I'll go ahead and put this screw back in. It's important to keep that on there. Oh, slippery. All right, there we go. All right, and that is how you set the servo arm. All right, so now that we have our servo arm set, we're going to go ahead and actually install the rod, which is this, where it's going to take the place of the factory rod. And it has a longer loop on it. That's for a reason. So it can slide on this stud here. When you pull the throttle open with your servo, it'll actually allow it to be able to move, and it won't pull on any of the throttle cables that you need for your motor. So then we just take this out. Loosen that up, but not all the way, just loose enough so you can get it off. And what you'll actually have to do is just push your throttle up, take this other one out, slip that off, set that aside, and we'll do the same thing with this. Slide that on, and you want to keep an eye on, this one came off just a little bit easy. So what I'll actually do is I'll make an adjustment to the loop size. Basically I'll just grab a little pliers and squeeze on here a little bit. To actually reduce the size of that. You want to have to snap it on there, so you don't want it so loose that it'll just pop off. But because these are kind of a mass manufactured rod, sometimes they need to just a little bit of tweaking to get them to fit. So we're just going to make a little squeeze, and hopefully that'll bring her down just a little bit. You can use a small mallet or a little ball peen hammer too. I've used those in the past, those work well. So we're just making a squeeze to reduce the size of that rod. So we'll see if that fits. All right, so we've made our adjustment, our final adjustment here, let's hope. Yep, that's a good fit. See how it kind of holds itself on? You got to snap it on there. That way it'll run the whole length and it won't fall off. So we're good to go. All right, so here we got our cable out of the kit. Now that we got our rod to fit just right, we're gonna go ahead and put our cable on before we put the rod through the brass piece on the carburetor here. So what you actually do is this cable will come like this. You just grab the one end and pull it out. And then hang on to your little swedge here. Set that aside. And then this loop, here's our rod. It's gonna go up over the screw and into the middle, or into the back side, I should say. So here we are, we're putting our rod back in here. We're gonna go ahead and grab the cable, slide the factory throttle open, and then we're gonna go ahead and close that down and let her close all the way. You gotta make sure your throttle's closed all the way. And then before we tighten up this screw, we're gonna actually push, we're gonna lift this up just a little bit, and you can also shift the motor into gear, but just leave it in slow until your stud's pointing forward. I just have my finger on it, that works too. But you want the loop all the way forward. That way when you're pulling on it with the TrollMaster, it has all this room to ride and it's not gonna be trying to pull on the tiller. All right, so we've got our rod pushed all the way forward. While holding it forward, you want to go ahead and just tighten this screw up until it's snug, and give it some support, and just give her a little quarter turn so it's nice and tight. And then you'll notice again that this loop is all the way forward. All right, so our rod's all the way forward. We're shifted into gear and just into slow setting, and I'll show you when you move the factory. That's why you put it all the way back here. So this stud can actually push the rod, which is going to push that throttle open for you. And then if your throttle's closed and you're going to use your TrollMaster, you just pull it and it rides right on that loop. That acts as a bypass, so you're not pulling and damaging the servo or pulling on the throttle cable drum. All right, so now that we got our rod in, our cable's on the brass stud on the carburetor, we're going to go ahead and run our braided cable to the servo. I'm actually going to go behind this tube, and we'll just slide it through the brass barrel of the servo and pull it somewhat tight. And then grab our screwdriver, and you just want to hold it tight. Make sure your throttle stays closed, but just take the slack out of the cable. And then just go ahead and turn it until it's snug. You don't have to get real tight. This is just to hold it in place for now. Okay. And then what we'll do now is we'll grab our little swedger, just a little crimp piece, put that on here. And then I like to use my little electrical pliers here, and we'll go ahead and just give her a little crimp. Just like that, and that'll keep it from slipping. If it ever does adjust a little bit, you'll see there's just a little bit of play there. That's good. Throttle stays closed, and that's it. We're good to go. So what we're doing is we're going to pull these nuts off the battery and get ready to mount the TrollMaster to the battery. As you can see, there's usually a lot of accessories and different things connected and hooked up. Just be careful not to disturb or damage anything while you're trying to do this. You'll just make more work for yourself. TrollMaster just needs either direct power to the battery, 12 volt, or you can even run it on a fuse panel up under the dash. We prefer you go right back to the battery. It's the cleanest source of power. Be sure not to cross any connections. Get a little spark and make your day a little shocking. Sorry for the puns. Okay, so I'm just going to loosen those for now. I need to put my terminals on, and then we'll go ahead and get that connected. Alright, so when you're routing the TrollMaster cable through the boat, through the back of the boat to the motor, you obviously want to try to tuck it up underneath. You know, get it up out of the way, make it nice and clean and neat. So what we're going to do is go through the battery compartment, up through here, and then we'll pull our slack, run it down along here, and then we're ready to put it inside the motor. So when you go to put it inside the motor, what you're going to want to do is find a nice spot, usually down along the side. Sometimes there's this little plug here. You can pull that out or make a slice here. Through some of these have a rubber cap you can cut through to get the wire in. You obviously don't want to go around moving parts. Don't put it through the choke hole, or the shifter rather. Don't put it through the shifter or the choke side. Don't try to cram and wedge it in between things. That can damage the wiring. So it can be a little tricky to find the right spot, but I think what we're going to do here today is we're going to go right through here. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Alright, so when choosing a spot to run your wiring in through, we obviously got it in through the plug. Now we need to bring it up to where it's going to plug into the servo motor. So you want to take your time and look at where the warm spots are going to really be. This manifold's going to get hot obviously when the motor's running, so you don't want to lay anything across it that's going to be close. This stuff's nice and shielded. So we'll run it around the back side, up through this little clip, and then we'll plug it into our servo. That'll be out of the way of all the moving parts in the front of the motor. You don't want to run anything up through here, interworking the shift and the clutch, or the shift and the choke rather. So we'll put this up here. A little more back. And then what we'll end up doing is a little cable tie right here, a little cable tie up here, and we'll plug our servo in with the locking end, just like that. I'll get a few cable ties and we'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so we got one cable tie there. I'll keep it kind of secured. We do provide a few of these in the kit. Some guys use a lot, which is fine. So we'll just kind of find our sweet spot here. Every motor is going to be a little bit different. You know, we like to just keep things out of the way of moving parts and keep them away from the heat. The moving parts, I suppose, are probably the biggest concern. You don't want your cable getting caught anywhere that's going to pull on anything and damage anything. So, and keep in mind you will be putting your cover back on after you put this wire in, so you don't want it hanging out too far. Make sure you tuck everything back the way it was. I'll probably clean this up a little bit more, but you get the idea of tucking this out of the way. We'll trim these ends off here as we go, and then we'll get to connecting our cable. So when zip tying things to the tube, obviously this is an air line for your intake. You don't want it too tight. Tight enough just to keep the cable there, but don't close this hose off. Don't get on it and tighten it up too much. Alright, now that we got our cable installed on the engine, we'll actually work it through a little bit here. We'll attach it to some of these other motor cables to keep it out of the way of any moving parts in the engine itself. Just a few zip ties to keep it tucked away. Watch out for your moving parts again. You're going to have to move those eventually in operation, so you don't want to get too close to those. But find a nice secure spot. Every application is going to be a little bit different depending on what you have set up on your motor. Alright, so now that we got our motor cable routed, we'll go ahead and plug the TrollMaster to the battery here. Put the positive side on. Just hand tight for now, and then we'll hit it with the socket after we're done here. Slide that back. Put the ground on here. Alright, so now that everything's installed, we got our servo arm connected, we got our braided cable in here, the rod is in. We're going to go ahead and give it a test run and see how it goes. So once we're powered up, we'll hit idle to switch to run mode, and then we can grab our knob and go ahead and start turning. And we see the factory throttles moving right along nicely. Everything's nice and smooth. Bumper back to idle. Alright, I think we're ready to go fishing.